After returning to my parents' house for childbirth and leaving my home unoccupied, I noticed our savings decreasing through online banking and immediately called my husband, James. "Hey, did you take money out using the debit card I left in the living room?" To my question, James laughed loudly over the phone. Confused and unable to grasp his meaning, James shocked me with his response. "I spent it all for her." "What?" James's laughter only irritated me more. I didn't even want to continue the conversation. However, I opened my mouth to confirm what bothered me the most. "Did you check the name on the debit card?" "Huh?" A few seconds after James's clueless voice, his tone changed drastically to a shriek. I took that as my cue to hang up the phone. Then I called a certain person. "Hello, this is Amelia." Actually. The person on the other end was furious after hearing my story. After the call ended, I gently stroked my belly. I will absolutely protect the child in my belly. My name is Amelia. I'm a 38-year-old housewife. I was an office worker before getting married, but I resigned when I got pregnant. Given my age, I was careful not to overdo it until the birth. James and I got married when I was 36. Being the eldest daughter, I needed my partner to be adopted into my family, which led to breakups whenever I found a potential partner. After repeating the same cycle and nearly giving up on marriage, I met James at a party a friend dragged me to. James was enthusiastic about being adopted from the start, ready to proceed immediately. Though his eagerness was a bit much for me, I was drawn to James, who expressed his feelings for me. Above all, James's appearance was exactly my type. My parents were charmed by James's eloquence, accepted him as their son-in-law, and even built a house near his workplace for us. I felt blessed by everyone's congratulations on this smoothly progressing marriage, despite my initial hesitations. Considering my age, we planned to adopt a child. However, to our joy, I became pregnant 3 months after our marriage, delighting both our parents and in-laws. Yet, James seemed less thrilled than expected, and his attitude towards our marriage gradually changed since then. James's job allowed for flexible hours, and living nearby meant he usually came home for lunch since we got married. But as my morning sickness worsened, James stopped coming home for lunch and even began coming home later at night. "Has work been busy lately? You've been coming home late. Since you're just at home, you have it easy, right? Got a problem with that?" Whenever I asked out of concern, James only responded with harsh words, making conversation impossible. However, he occasionally brought home flowers, matching glasses, or pair watches as gifts. Though I felt somewhat appeased by these gifts, I appreciated his thoughtfulness. I convinced myself that James must be grumpy because of his busy work schedule. But eventually, he started coming home in the middle of the night, and after a month, the gifts ceased. Not only that, but it became common for him to return home in the early morning. Each time James came home, he would immediately take a shower, drink only coffee, and leave for work. At first, he would ask about my prenatal checkups, but even that stopped, and he seemed annoyed whenever I tried to talk to him. This transformation in James was particularly hard on me, already emotionally unstable from the pregnancy. What hurt the most was the smell of James's clothes in the laundry basket. The smell of a woman's perfume whenever I washed his clothes triggered my morning sickness. Initially, I thought he might have visited places with women for work-related entertainments, but then I realized the perfume scent on James's clothes was always the same. Could it be an affair? Voicing my fears suddenly made the reality sink in, and I trembled in terror. Despite being newlyweds and pregnant, the thought of infidelity was unbelievable. I tried desperately to convince myself it might be a misunderstanding. But that didn't alleviate my anxiety. Gradually becoming paranoid, I found myself unexpectedly bursting into tears or zoning out, feeling increasingly cornered. In my second trimester, I found a letter in the post. It was a credit card demand notice from a company I didn't recognize. When I handed the envelope to James, who returned home late at night, he took it reluctantly, checked the contents, and nonchalantly said, sorry, can you transfer the payment for this? Huh? That's why I'm telling you to pay this off tomorrow, James yelled suddenly, causing me to flinch. Without paying any mind to my reaction, James pushed the credit card bill at me and headed for the shower. I stood there for a moment before coming to my senses and checking the contents of the envelope. $5,000! The amount was so staggering that I couldn't help but exclaim. What on earth was it spent on? Curiosity got the better of me, and I looked at the credit card statement. Listed were names of jewelry and novelty stores, each transaction amounting to $1,000. It could be the money spent on gifts for me. Resignedly, I did as James had said and paid the bill immediately. However, our joint account, being new, didn't have much in it yet. So, I had to pay from my personal account. I really wanted to bill James, but the atmosphere wasn't right to bring it up. And since then, month after month, James kept dumping the credit card payments on me. I meticulously checked and copied each statement. By then, it was clear to me that the money was being spent on another woman, but being pregnant and feeling immobilized, I couldn't bring myself to suggest divorce, holding on to a sliver of hope that he would stop his affairs after the baby was born. However, a shocking truth came to light during a solo shopping trip one day. The day after I saw James's credit card bill. Stopping by a store, I realized it was where James had bought us matching pajamas. I remembered how happy I was when he got them, saying they were big enough to fit even as my belly grew. But my heart sank when I casually checked the price tag on a pair of pajamas. What's going on? The price was a third of what was listed on James's statement. There wasn't even a sale going on. In fact, the tag stated it was a new arrival. Meaning, this was the store's regular pricing. That's when I formulated a terrifying hypothesis. James was having an affair, buying things for his mistress that she liked or wanted, and to avoid suspicion, he'd buy something for me too. A hypothesis so vile that a person with a normal conscience couldn't bear to do it. Thinking back, the gifts never really suited my taste. I assumed they were James's preference, thinking we'd understand each other's tastes over time. Even if the designs were somewhat off for me, I was happy just knowing James had picked them out. But James had betrayed my genuine feelings. That betrayal hurt more than anything, and I was furious. I couldn't let him squander the money I wanted to save for our child. With that thought, I began planning to leave James. During this tumultuous time, Isla, my mother-in-law, visited our home. Isla, being frugal and somewhat absent-minded, was very strict about money. James found her thriftiness suffocating, but I quite liked Isla. The only issue was her doting on James, her son, believing everything he said was right. Is he eating properly? He seems a bit thinner. Yes, he's eating fine, I replied, avoiding mentioning who made the meals or where. The truth was, James hardly ever ate my cooking, maybe twice a week at most. But telling Isla that would make a big deal out of it. So I chose to gloss over it. After hearing my response, Isla left, stuffing the fridge with bags full of food before departing. How much of it would actually end up in James's stomach, I wondered as I put everything away. Then, I noticed a bag under the table. Inside the unfamiliar bag were a debit card and a seal, both belonging to Isla. I hurriedly made a call. Hello, sorry to bother you. You left your debit card and seal here. Oh dear, that's troublesome. Well, it's for a savings account I rarely use, so I'll pick it up next time I visit. Got it. Despite planning to return to my parents' house for the birth of my child soon, I couldn't help but feel uneasy about leaving the debit card at this house. However, since Isla said it was okay, I decided to just store it as instructed. I thought it wouldn't end well if I told James about it, so I kept it to myself and stored it where I usually keep my own debit card. 2 months later, I left for my parents' house with just my debit card. The thought of James now boldly meeting up with his affair partner was enough to bring tears to my eyes, but I had to brace myself for the birth first. During this time, Isla contacted me wanting to check the balance of her savings account. Reluctantly, I got in touch with James to check it for her. Since the last transaction was a bit old and Isla is not tech-savvy, I ended up checking the amount through online banking myself. Isla's savings account already had $200,000 in it. When I told her, Isla just said, "Thanks," and hung up. She's probably going to talk about it with someone in the neighborhood. I didn't think much of it. However, a few days later, my fears came true. It started with a phone call. "It looks like the savings account has been canceled. Do you know anything about it?" Being away at my parents' house for the birth and having left the house empty, I noticed the savings amount had decreased through online banking and immediately called James. "Hey, did you take money out with the debit card from the living room?" James laughed loudly on the other end of the phone. Confused and not understanding the meaning, James gave me a shocking reply. "I spent it all for her." "What?" James's laughter was just irritating. I didn't even want to talk anymore. However, I had to ask the most pressing question. "Did you check the name on the debit card?" "Eh?" After a few seconds of his dumbfounded voice, a shriek replaced it. I took that as my cue to hang up. Then, I made a call to someone. "Hello, this is Amelia." Actually. The person on the other end was furious after hearing my story. After the call, I gently stroked my belly. I will definitely protect this child in my belly. I immediately went to talk to Dad. Despite the heaviness of my full-term belly, I couldn't just sit around. Seeing me enter his office in such a desperate state, Dad was a bit shaken but soon regained his composure. "Give it your all," and said, "I first made a plan." By now, James must be getting an earful from the person I had just called. Just the thought of it made me unable to stop laughing. A few hours later, James called me. "Why didn't you tell me the debit card was Mom's?" "Well, I didn't think you'd use it. Plus, her name is on the debit card." "You should support me as a wife." "Why should I support your affair?" I could hear James groaning over the phone. Overcoming the sleepiness from battling it all day as a pregnant woman, I firmly presented James with a divorce. "Let's get a divorce." "Huh? Why all of a sudden?" "All of a sudden? You buy the same things for your wife and mistress and have me pay for them? The last straw was you trying to withdraw money from my account." "Well, that account was your mom's, but I know everything now. Do we need any more reasons for a divorce? Are you going to make our child grow up with just one parent?" I felt nauseous at James bringing up the child in my belly now, when he had shown no interest before. My anger exploded. My sleepiness completely disappeared and I cried out loud for the first time in a while. "Better to be a single parent than to have a scumbag like you acting all high and mighty as a dad." James was silent for a moment at my outburst, then said something, but I ignored it and hung up. Just then, I received a call from Dad saying he had finished arranging for a lawyer. He offered to handle it on my behalf, worrying about my health, but I wanted to see James fall into hell myself, so I refused. Then, I called Isla. Without much of a greeting, she moved on to the topic of savings. I can't believe he would misuse the funds. But, Amelia, you were also at fault. If you needed something, you could have just told me, and I would have considered it.
Huh?
For the sake of the child, you wanted to replace the car, right? It wasn't good for James to choose a luxury car, but Amelia, you also didn't check in advance because you were going back to your parents' house. That's not good either. I was speechless at Isla's words. James had explained to Isla that he had no choice but to use her money because, after telling me it was okay to buy a car, he chose a luxury car and then couldn't afford it at payment time. I could only sigh at James's continuous lies.
That's a lie from James. He didn't buy a luxury car, and I never said it was okay to buy one.
Eh? What do you mean? James has been having an affair and withdrew money from your account for his mistress. He mistook it for my account and told me as if it was only natural. Isla seemed to be at a loss for words. She was deceived and had her money misused. No matter how much she loves her son, there's a limit. But knowing Isla, who dotes on her son, she might believe whatever James tells her again. I played the recording of the phone call with James that I had secretly made earlier. Isla listened in silence until the call with James was finished. Then, after it was over, she let out the longest sigh I've ever heard from her.
Amelia, I'm sorry. It was my fault.
No. How could I do this to Amelia, who is going to give birth to our precious child? Have you already signed with a lawyer? I will help discipline that child. Cutting ties is easy, but I can't let a child who causes trouble for others run wild. I love this aspect of Isla. Normally, she prioritizes her son, but she also cares about social standing, so she has always been strict with James about rules and regulations. Knowing Isla was essentially lenient with him, James often tried to lie to get out of trouble, especially when he did something wrong. I overlooked small lies, and even though Isla might have made snide remarks to me, she never did anything unreasonable. That's why I tried not to mind. However, this might have led to the current situation. Thinking this, I decided to make sure to drop him into hell this time. A few days later, a meeting was held at my parents' house with Isla included. I had the person I invited earlier wait in the guest room and then invited James and Isla in. When we guided them to the guest room, the face of James, who had been sulking, changed to one of astonishment.
Why is Madison here?
I invited her. She was necessary for our discussion today. Isla seemed not to understand who the person in front of her was at first, but upon my explanation, realized this was the mistress who had used her savings, and her expression filled with anger.
You!
How dare you misuse my savings?
No, James said it was okay to use it. We went to luxury hotels and enjoyed spas and stuff. Why am I being scolded now?
Madison showed no signs of remorse, sitting in her chair with arrogance. I wondered how long her composure would last, smiling inwardly as I seated Isla and James and took my place. Isla was the first to speak. I'm very sorry for what has happened. We would like to proceed as Amelia wishes, so please let us know your preferences.
Huh? Why do I have to do what she says? Amelia's the one who got pregnant and frustrated me. I'm the one who should be getting compensation. Be quiet.
What?
It's the truth, isn't it?
James continued to complain even as Isla scolded him, looking no more than a child throwing a tantrum, causing me to sigh. James glared at me, apparently annoyed by my reaction. In the midst of this atmosphere, it was Madison, the mistress, who spoke carelessly.
Can I go home? I don't understand why I was suddenly called here.
No, you're involved, aren't you?
This isn't a place for you to relax, so please listen carefully. I'm busy, though,
Madison said, playing with her hair. I tried to maintain a smile despite my irritation.
James and Madison, we will be seeking compensation from you. $50,000 from James and $30,000 from Madison. $50,000? That's too much.
If you have a complaint, we can take it to court. At the mention of court, James's face slackened. Madison remained unfazed. I was curious about her demeanor, but its meaning would soon become clear.
Then, James, good luck paying $80,000. And since I'm pregnant, you'll be taking care of the birth expenses and everything else. What? Pregnant? I wasn't informed.
Because I didn't say. Madison's revelation seemed to have caught James off guard. Having somewhat anticipated this from my prior research, I wasn't too surprised. Thinking about the even bigger shock to come, I was, in fact, inwardly smirking.
Well, it doesn't matter who pays. I'll be expecting $80,000 from both of you. There's no way we can pay that amount. Don't get ahead of yourself.
As James stood up in protest, a satisfying sound echoed. The source of the sound was James's cheek, now reddening. Beside him, Isla was breathing heavily, making it clear she had slapped James.
Enough is enough. Mom.
Amelia, I'll pay the full amount. Of course, I'll make sure James repays me. I'll also have him pay child support. James was left wide-eyed and frozen at Isla's words. I thanked Isla and delivered the final blow to James.
Well, it might be tough, but good luck. Paying back mom and child support, and then your new life with Madison. Raising a child whose father could be anyone, James, you do have your kind moments, don't you? Whose child could be anyone? Didn't you know? Madison, it seems there are a few others. What? What do you mean?
James, now standing, raised his voice towards Madison. Madison, thinking she hadn't been caught, looked up at James with a pale face.
It's a lie! It's only James for me.
And who might these people be? I presented Madison with photos that served as evidence, showing her entering lodging facilities with multiple men.
You've been deceiving me?
It's not like that. Really. I only love you.
How can I believe that?
Madison, in tears, pleaded her case in front of an indignant James, but the evidence made her words seem like lies. However, whether James and Madison stayed together or separated was of no interest or concern to me.
Well, that's none of my business, so could you please leave the house? Hey, Amelia, wait. Maybe we should reconsider the divorce.
The divorce is final. James, looking utterly despondent, was led away by Isla. Madison staggered out behind them. I watched them leave, feeling a sense of liberation. After the divorce, James and Madison didn't end up marrying. The child in Madison's belly was confirmed to be James's through a DNA test, but Madison lost interest in James once his money ran out and decisively left him. Yet, she still demands child support, and James, burdened with repayments to Isla and child support to both me and Madison, has most of his salary drained every month. He's recently started working in road construction to make ends meet. As for Madison, after cutting ties with James,
the child is yours.
She was extracting child support from multiple men by claiming the child was theirs. However, once it was revealed the child was James's, the men demanded their money back and cut off their support. Now, she lives in an old apartment with her child, juggling part-time jobs to get by. As a fellow mother, I'm concerned for the child. But since it's a consequence of her choices, I don't feel inclined to help. I just hope she stays out of my life from now on. As for me, after that meeting, I gave birth safely. A healthy boy was born. Despite it being my first childbirth, it was a quick delivery that even surprised the attending doctor. Though painful, meeting my child, whom I had carefully nurtured for 10 months, was incredibly joyful, and I vowed to make him happy with all my might.